everybody. This is Ian Braverman with Cuberviews. Welcome to the first inaugural episode. Today, I have a really great guest on, my friend Sam, otherwise known as Finman. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for asking.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear. Sam and I have been friends for a long time. We were actually college roommates back when we went to UConn together. Yeah, so this is the first inaugural episode of Cube Reviews. And basically, what this podcast is going to be is I'm going to be bringing on different friends from my local Cube play group. We cube every week at Games IRL in Avon, Connecticut. Many people in the community have their own cube, and I have many cubes myself. So we're just going to be every week talking about a different cube and having a fun conversation. So yeah, to start, a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name's Ian, your host, and I have been playing Magic for years now at this point. Started around Cons of Tarkir, and I started with mostly Commander, Modern, Standard, but then around my senior year of high school, my friend introduced me to Cube. We built a peasant cube together, and that cube was drafted a lot in when I was in college. And ever since then, I've had the cube bug outside of work. I am a software engineer, and I love biking and love playing pickleball and ping pong. So, yeah, Sam, introduce yourself. I'm excited to have everyone meet you.
Hey, yeah. I'm glad to be here. I've been playing card games for pretty much as long as I can remember. It was way more into Pokemon when I was much younger. I was first exposed to Magic when I was like 7 years old, I think. It was around when seventh edition came out, and they had the buggiest, the most chopped precursor to Arena that you could, not Arena, MTGO, I guess,
Oh, yeah.
you could possibly imagine. It was this, it had the most scuffed 2001 CGI opening, and you had two pre-built decks built around like Venerable Monk, vanilla creatures. You had Eager Cadet in your deck. It was awful, but I loved it. I didn't have too many friends who played that though, so I sort of dropped it until I eventually went to college, where there were a good half dozen friends who I started playing with. It was almost entirely kitchen table until Commander 2014 came out later that year, and I had to pick up the red deck because it had a worm coil engine.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the rest is kind of just history. I started playing Cube, I think, around the time that you started attending UConn as well. You were a couple years behind me. And then from there, I branched out a bunch in formats. I used to play a lot of EDH, not so much anymore, but I stick to Pioneer pretty loyally, and a bunch of other 75 card formats. Lately, I've been taking a look into $30 vintage, but we'll see where that goes.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be a little bit, I know, happening at KubeCon. So hopefully you're able to play some of that there.
True, true,
And
true. I can't wait to
outside of
scrub out and
Magic.
then just jam that instead at the end.
Oh, yeah. And outside of Magic, what do you do?
Outside of Magic, I am a certification engineer. So, like, I'm an engineer who dreams, not dreams, but like to think of himself as a lawyer, and who also dabbles in ontology, which is like Socrates, pretentious kind of stuff. I had to spend an afternoon trying to figure out exactly what a building was once, and that's about as accurate as you can describe my job.
Yeah. Yeah. So Cube has definitely grown a lot since we both first started playing. From having to force everyone to play my peasant cube every week to eventually now CubeCon going on. It's amazing.
Those were the
Uh,
good old days. I miss that peasant cube.
yeah. I'll have to bring it out sometime. But
Yeah.
today we're talking about, I'm really excited to talk about the Circle of Life Cube, which is one of your newer cube projects. We've
Mm-hmm.
done it a few times at our play group, and it's been a lot of fun. Tell me about the cube.
The Circle of Life Cube is, it's kind of a working title. I'm sure that I'll think of something better in the next 8 or so months until we have to throw submissions in again. But the base of it is pretty straightforward. I'd say it's around a modern cube power level, give or take. But there are two major exceptions that influence not just gameplay, but also the way that you actually interact with the draft. Not in a conspiracy sense, but more in a decision making sense. The first rule, which a bunch of listeners might be familiar with, is that it is a desert cube. That means that you don't have access to a box of basic lands at the end of the draft. Instead, you are expected to draft all 15, 16, 17, however many lands you want to use during your games during the draft itself. It's a bit of a polarizing notion for cubes. Some people just like to rest easy in the knowledge that they'll have lands at the end. Personally, I'm a fan of being forced into situations where you have to forego a solid stable or a bomb rare because you realize, geez, this basic island is probably what I want. Not only that, it is almost certainly the correct pick over this lightning bolt or this, again, like recurrent nightmare, that kind of thing. So I like that element of decision making that it adds to the draft. And the second major change is also related to the mana that you're going to have in your deck, and that is a change that is unique to this environment. Specifically, when you're casting a creature spell, you may sacrifice an existing creature that you already control, and then contribute the mana cost of the sacrificed creature to the cost of casting that first spell. So it's a roundabout way of saying that it's like a emerge, essentially, for those who are familiar with that mechanic. The main difference here is that when you cast a spell with emerge, it's only discounted by the generic cost, while this sort of homebrewed mechanic allows you to contribute colored pips to the cost as well. So, for example, if you wanted to imagine a world where you have an Imperial Recruiter on the board and you would just tutor it for a Goblin Rabble Master, you could cast that Rabble Master for free by sacrificing the Imperial Recruiter you just used to tutor it. This creates a lot of instances where you can have some very explosive plays. And one of the main archetypes of the cube is actually a Naya Storm deck.
Yeah.
You're not using like Brain Freeze or anything like that to kill people, but you're generating an infinite storm count using things like Eternal Witnesses, whatnot, that kind of thing. Very interesting environment.
Oh yeah, I mean we've done it a few times in our play group. Every time has been a blast. The last time that we drafted it was last Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and I went like an Esper sacrifice blink kind of like mid-range deck, and I was using cards like Delny, which if people don't know, Delny 3 drop in white lets you copy your act like abilities of creatures. They have power 2 or less. And also it gives your creatures like evasion for creatures of power 3 or greater. So it allows for some really crazy plays. We like mid game discovered an infinite combo with
That was
Delny.
that is the most Ian Braverman thing ever, is discovering mid combat that you can generate infinite mana and infinite blinks and then just not using it at all.
Oh, I
Oh
all I
no,
know is
wait. You
blink.
drew like 7 cards. That's right. You were able to tutor up a bunch of things. I remember
Oh
that.
yeah.
It
Felidar
was cool.
Guardian, Delny, Restoration Angel, just infinite blinks, but also you copy the Felidar Guardian blink with Delny. It was awesome. It was so
It
fun.
was on that day that I realized you can actually blink lands with Felidar Guardian.
Oh yeah.
Really cool.
It's so great. I was able to blink like the MDFC creatures with like Witch Enchanter. That was
I
so
love
cool.
interactions like that. That's actually it's off topic, but one of the decks I'm building in 30 Vintage uses a similar interaction. It's a Ghostly Flicker dual caster mage combo deck, but you play 5 copies of the 2/2 with prowess from Modern Horizons 3 that comes in as a MDFC. So you can
Ooh.
blink your land with Ghostly Flicker, then get Ghostly Flicker back immediately with the thing when it ETBs. Very cool,
Oh, I
but it's
love
off
that kind of
topic.
stuff.
I
Oh,
love that
Ghostly
kind of
Flicker.
interactions.
Oh man, Ghostly Flicker, Eternal Witnesses. That's all I need in Magic. That's all I want.
The
And
listeners don't know this yet, but Ian Braverman is known for being the blink guy in our group. If you have the opportunity to force Eternal Witness, Time Walk, Infinite combos, like it's going to happen.
I mean, I
You'll
do
be
have a
the one
Bant
doing it.
Cube. I had to build the Bant Cube, but everything Bant. I love it. And
Mhm.
about this cube, so tell me like what gave you the idea of this cube? What was the inspiration behind it? What made you
The
build it?
inspiration is kind of funny, actually. So, sometime in April or May of this year, I was browsing the submissions for CubeCon because everyone has like really cool ideas that I like to draw inspiration from the success of others, you know. But one of the cubes caught my eye. It was submitted by Lincoln Davidson. Shout out to him, great designer, great guy. We got together at CubeCon last year.
Oh yeah, he's
It's
great.
really cool. Mm-hmm. I love drafting his cubes, but the one that caught my eye back in April/May, I can't quite remember when it was, but it was called the Emerging Cube. And my head immediately went to the Emerge mechanic. I just assumed that was playing a heavy role in it. In reality, it wasn't the case. The cube is actually instead of that, it's a really cool snapshot of what cube environments looked like back in 2017. I won't delve too much into it. It's still a really cool cube, but not what I envisioned when I first read the title, you know? So voting season came and went, and I found myself back at the drawing board trying to figure out what I wanted to do for CubeCon 2025. I had another cube, which we might talk about at some point, made it to the what was it called? The sudden death. I made it to the sudden death rankings and just barely missed out. I needed an idea that could catch people's attention, you know, because otherwise it was a pretty vanilla idea. And I just kept returning back to that one thing that I'd seen, the emerging cube, and the first impression that I had of it. And I got to thinking, what would that look like if I forced something like that? What if every creature had emerged? What kind of effects could be good? What would be bad?
Yeah.
How would the cadence of a game be affected if you could just accelerate as fast as you could when every creature has emerged? I reached some very interesting conclusions, especially after putting about 2 minutes of thought into what kind of cards would be good, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, I mean that's a really funny story. I actually didn't know the story behind it, that it was kind of like an accident that you
Very
thought
much
that
so.
this other cube was what you wanted this cube to be, and then you were like,
I was like, I'm
this
stealing that.
cube needs to
It's not even my
exist.
thing to steal, but it's not even like someone's idea, but I'm stealing that.
I want this cube to exist so badly that I'm going to create it. That's awesome. And yeah, like you said, I mean, you have many cubes, you've built many cubes that we've all loved. Uh, like you, for example, you built the TLDR cube, which was all the
Mm-hmm,
cards in
mm-hmm.
the cube have to be
Rest in
five
peace.
lines of less. You also built your just like the Sam cube, which is just cards that you love, and it was a really awesome cube. How has this cube designing been different? Like because it's like a desert cube, it has such an unusual restriction. Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, it's been tough to pin some things down making this cube, but it's been a ton of fun designing the environment. I wanted to force an environment where a lot of unknown or underpowered cards are suddenly playable. I'm a huge fan of looking at something in a draft that I've never read before and thinking, is this good?
Yeah.
Hold on. Am I not taking Swords to Plowshares and I'm
How
taking
do
this
I break this
rare?
card? It's such
Yeah,
a
how do I
weird
break
card.
this card? And that's the kind of feeling I wanted to invoke in my drafters as much as possible. Like a lot of cube staples are still in here. Like I've recently been convinced to put Swords to Plowshares in here after avoiding it for a while. But I still wanted people to be scratching their heads and doing like double takes, which again, part of that sort of pours back into the Desert Cube idea. I want people to be sitting there looking at a basic island like, am I really taking this right now? Because I have to take this right now. I have to pass this bomb rare because I didn't invest in my land base enough early on. And then, of course, I wanted this second rule to sort of add like a tertiary element to that. You're not just drafting good cards, you're also drafting weird cards, and you're also drafting lands, and you have to balance the three of those when you're going through this environment.
Yeah, and the cool
But
thing about it is it doesn't even feel like super complicated. Like it doesn't feel like overwhelming for some reason, even though it does have such unusual restrictions. Uh,
mhm.
and I mean, desert cubes are super fun. I don't remember. Did you do it also, Gwen Decker's cube, the Loam cube? That was a
I
really
wanted
cool desert
to.
cube.
He had it at SCG Hartford, I think it was, or something like that. But I was the ninth person, and I
Oh, that's
volunteered
right.
to not draft. I just kind of wanted to watch you guys do your thing. But that is a really cool cube idea. I'm going to have a lot of trouble figuring out what I want to draft at CubeCon this year for the main event, but that one is pretty up there for me.
Absolutely. So desert cubes are have been like exploding in popularity. They're so fun.
Mm-hmm,
It
mm-hmm.
adds, like you said, such an unusual dimension to the draft of, oh my gosh, I have to make sure I have enough lands at the end. And then
Exactly.
it's also really interesting because the emerge part where all your creatures can be sacked for mana, basically, it's like how many lands do I put in my deck now? Because
Mm-hmm.
do I actually need 17 lands? Or will I
Exactly.
be fine with
In
like
fact, that was
10?
actually
Who
one of the
knows?
things that surprised me the most going into like the first and second drafts of the cube is that so going into that, I had no idea how games are going to be, what people were going to draft
Yeah, you
towards.
thought it was going to be terrible.
Yeah, a good portion of my expectations was that games would be a total train wreck, that people wouldn't be able to function on a game to game basis, or that games would end way too quickly. And then in the end, it wound up a lot more typical than I expected, which we take those. If the game is functioning, then, or if the cube is functioning, then that's a great first draft.
Yeah, I'm sure that other people listening have had the experience if you curate your own cubes where you build a new cube and you're like, "Oh, this cube is amazing." And then you try it with your friend group and it needs a little bit of tuning, or a cube that you thought, "Oh, this is a strange idea. I don't know how it's going to turn out."
This
And
is
you
some
bring
great
it and everyone
foreshadowing
loves
for
it.
the proliferate cube, isn't it?
Oh gosh.
It's
Yeah, that's
another name drop
similar.
for the future.
Oh yeah, my one of my other cubes, which we'll get into more, I'm sure in the future, is I have the proliferate cube, which is definitely very much inspired by other proliferate cubes I've seen or played. And when I first built it, I was like, "This is going to be so cool! It's going to be great!" And oh man, was I wrong? What a disaster! People saying this is the worst cube ever, but there was some cool interactions and I stuck with it. And I know it's still controversial among my play group, but
I
it's
hate it.
definitely
It's the worst thing I've ever done.
you're definitely been one of the good critics. And but yeah, I mean when you first design a cube, especially when it's super experimental, it's like what's gonna happen? Who knows? And it's a great feeling when people end up liking it, or even if they don't, like bringing it again another week and hopefully people like it more the next time.
Mm-hmm. It's part of
And
the cube process. It's all iterative.
absolutely. And so I know we've drafted a few times, like we said. What have been some of your like favorite decks that you've seen in this cube, or favorite
Oh, you
interactions
actually
you've
kind of
seen?
spoiled one of my favorite decks I've seen so far. It was yours from last Saturday.
Oh, really?
I love it when people like, were playing together and they just accidentally combo off in front of me. I'm like, oh, I did that. Me. I laid down you have no one to blame but yourself in that case when you're the cube designer, you know? But that
Yes,
was a really cool thing. Like Delney is one of my favorite cards for cube to come out of the last year or so of Magic. Like I'm talking top three. And like as far as cube cards in general go, it's like a top five. It is so easy to just slot it into a cube and get the neurons firing for your drafters. They see this card, everything lights up upstairs, and they immediately want to build around it. And that is so
totally
cool.
agree.
It's such a low investment, and it's not even an overpowered card because it's a 3 mana 2/2. Like, yeah, once you land it, you have the ability to start doing very powerful things, but it gives your opponent plenty of opportunity to deal with it, which I love. So very I love build arounds like that, which reward people for drafting creatively, things that impact how you pick the cards. Like you might just choose weaker creatures on the basis that they synergize with ability. I'm a huge fan. But besides that, I'm really happy with how red black goblins turned out. I kind of seeded the cube very much with that archetype in mind. I didn't want it to be too parasitic, so a lot of the goblins are playable on their own. But I've found in pretty much every draft, there is one person who just jams mid-range black, red Muxus goblins, and they have a fantastic time with it. So I'm really glad how that turned out. This is my first time putting like a tribal synergy element into one of my cubes. And again, it wasn't as parasitic as I usually consider tribal decks to be. Talking about another cube of another friend of ours, someone has a strictly worse cube. And for a
Yes,
while, he had this merfolk archetype, and it was just miserable. None of the cards in there were playable outside of the merfolk deck. And when they were together, they were quite literally unbeatable. So much of the rest of the cube was just useless in the face of a 2 mana 2/2 that buffed the rest of your board.
shout outs to Connor. Hopefully we'll have him on in a future
Oh,
episode
for
to
sure,
talk
for sure,
about it.
for sure. I like a lot of what he's done since then, but it was just funny for the longest time. There was just this broken tribal archetype in there. But one of my favorite lines was it was in the first draft of the cube, and that's when I really realized that this thing had legs for interesting plays and for. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Like, well, that's when I first realized I had a lot of interesting possibilities for drafting, and where I realized that I actually had something unique on my hands. A lot of my cubes historically I've been very safe with, very like, oh, this is a modern mid-range cube. It's a bunch of the cards I like, all a bunch of cubes that have terrible elevator pitches. You're not going to grab people's attention with them. But in this game, it was a deck that I drafted, so I'm going to be a little selfish here to promote my own deck.
Of
But
course.
it was some Bant Ramp pile pretty much. And so it was a two-turn setup. On one turn, I played Recruiter of the Guard, tutoring up Scornful Egotist, which anyone who knows what both of those
Ooh,
cards
yeah.
do, like they know how stupid that statement is. I'm
That's so
spending my really
good.
powerful tutor card to tutor up an 8 mana 1/1. But I on that same turn, I cast Egotist for it to morph cost. Passed the turn. Luckily enough, my opponent wasn't able to kill it in the meantime. My turn comes back around, and I unmorph the Egotist and then immediately sacrifice it, basically turning it into an 8 mana ritual effect. I cast Cataract Leviathan off this Egotist and bounced all non-land permanents on the board, and then immediately sacked the Cataract Leviathan to cast Meosion of Seeing Winds. See how many of
Oh,
you know what that card is without
I
looking.
do not remember.
Uh, 8 mana. No, it's more than 8 mana. It's like 9 mana for a blue permanent. Oh, 10 mana? Yeah, it's 10 mana. Sorry, owner of the cube here, and I don't know how much my cards cost. But it's this 3/3 that comes in with an indestructible counter, more or less, and then you can remove that counter to draw cards equal to the number of permanents you control. So, in one fell swoop, basically, I manifested a bunch of mana, bounced all permanents, and then drew like 8 cards more or less. And that was a boom, boom, boom. And that was really cool to me. That was the kind of bombastic play that I want to encourage within this environment. And that's when I realized this cube has legs. This is a really cool play. A lot of
Yeah,
nothing
that's something
happened
you
after
would
that in
never
that
see
game, but
anywhere
that
else.
individual moment. So that's really cool. I've seen a couple other things like that. Some cards had to be taken out or tuned or whatnot, but I'm glad where the cube is at now.
That's definitely something you would never see anywhere else. I mean, scornful
No, no, no.
egotist. Oh my
This is
gosh.
the. I'm convinced this is the only place in Magic where you'll ever see Scornful Egotist. Like, period.
And it's good.
Yeah, it's actually one of the better cards in the cube. Buy your foils now before, uh, before Emerge Cube becomes popular.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen some really cool lines. Like one that was really good, like the first draft, was when people would go Runescar Demon into Archon of Cruelty. Oh,
Oh
that was
yeah, I think I saw
disgusting.
that exact play. I think 4 to 5 times over the course of the night between 3 rounds. So Archon was one of the first creatures to come out of the cube. It did too good a job at just closing the game immediately. Runescar is still in there, but I have a couple other more interesting things that you can tutor up.
And that's a great segue into like how has the tuning process been like for this cube? I mean, I know that for other cubes, it's about like, oh, I'm going to update this section because I think it can have a couple more support pieces or this. But for this cube being so different, I know that you've really changed like the interaction of how cards, like how strong the interaction is to interact with your opponent multiple times. I know you've had to cut a couple like really insane combos like we just talked about. What has been the tuning process been for this?
Oh, it's very much like a Wild West process. I had like my estimations of what was going to be good going into developing this cube. Some of that was right, some of that was way off, and then some of that was kind of somewhere in the middle, especially when it comes to evaluating individual card effects. Uh, but the really fun part is that any number of garbage rares that are sitting in your closet could be playable in this cube, which I'm a huge fan of. So rather than like looking into the most playable cards from MH3 for this cube, I find myself looking back a lot at much older sets. Like I got a foil copy of Skirk Fire Marshal from the bad foil binder at RLGS, and I was surprised someone even knew what this card does at the
What does
store.
that do?
It's a great card. It's a 5 mana 2/2. Already off to a great
High
start. You
power.
know, it's got protection from red. They don't print that keyword anymore. That's how you know it's powerful. And then you can tap. I think it was 5 goblins you control to deal 10 damage to all creatures and both players.
Oh, that'll end
And it's
games.
so cool in this cube. But I love going through old cards and just finding a new purpose for them, kind of like in the old spirit of EDH from back in the day, that kind of thing. And that's the really fun part of the tuning process. The really unfun part is having to realize what needs to change in order to make the environment more playable and more enjoyable for the drafters, kind of a kill your darlings kind of thing, you know. So when I first built the cube, I wanted to dial it back on the interaction a little bit. I figured that straight up more traditional powerhouses like Swords to Plowshares, for example, we kind of talked about that already. I figured those would be way too good. You don't want to sacrifice one creature, feed it into another creature, feed it into another creature, a big thing, only for it to get immediately blanked so that you're like 3-for-1 or anything like that. But I had subconsciously baked that into the rest of the cube as well. Like I had included creatures on the assumption that they would be removed eventually. So a lot of them had powerful ETBs or leave the battlefield effects. So in reality, what we realized last weekend, this was a few drafts in for the cube, is that something like Swords to Plowshares would actually not be that broken after all, because our opponent most likely already had several death triggers and several ETB triggers, or likely had an engine in play already that made use of the creatures that they're sacrificing in the meantime. Something like a Harvester of Souls effect is really powerful in a cube like this. So even though they did sink 3 cards into getting this big fatty out, and even though you did Swords to Plowshares it, they still drew 2 or 3 cards in the meantime. So they got the chance to do their big thing, and you got the chance to not die to the big thing without doing anything about it. So going forward, I think a lot of the tools are going to be a little more powerful, a little more typical, but I'm going to try and preserve as much of the goofiness as I can.
Yeah, it's been really unique with seeing like interaction. For example, when you first built it, it was like, oh, is a 3-for-1 going to feel horrible? But it turns out removal is actually kind of even risky in this queue because there's so many creatures with flash, and
That's true.
there's so many things you could do at instant speed, blinking. It was pretty crazy to see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really been interesting to see that go.
I agree. I agree. It's been really interesting to see how the more things change, the more they kind of stay the same in a cube environment. I assumed it would be miserable. I assumed that removal would be insane, so I had to dial it back. And then it turns out that the mechanics of the game are a lot more resilient than I thought they were. The cadence of how a game goes is more concrete than I thought they were. It's kind of what you would expect from a game that's lasted 30 years, but I digress.
Yeah. And building off what you said, like when you have a cube that's so out there and so unusual, it can be kind of nerve-wracking to build something this like what if my play group will like it? Is it going to be too out there for people? Is it going to be too complicated? So I know that I've definitely had that experience before. Like both of us built what's called a bulk cube. The bulk cube is where people start at 3 life and 15 card deck. And when we first built it, we were talking about it like it was like a joke. Like, oh, what if you started at 3 life? Like
Yeah,
this could be
exactly.
so silly. But it turns out to be super fun and
Oh,
really
exactly.
engaging
We weren't even the
games.
first ones to come up with the idea, which is the really funny part. Someone else had independently thought of that earlier in the same year.
Yeah. And I had the chance to play that at CubeCon last year. And it
Mhm.
was a really interesting cube, totally different perspective
Oh,
from what
100%.
what we had. So
Ours was way
yeah,
more explosive. And like in my cube, you'd play a turn one jackal pop off a barbarian ring, and you'd immediately die because your opponent has a shock effect. That kind
yeah.
of games would last 3 turns or something like that. But in his meeting, it was way, way, way different. But
We'll
I like
definitely
to.
have another episode in the future talking more about bulk cubes
Oh,
because
for sure,
a
for
few
sure.
people in our playgroup have actually built
We got to
them and
get
they've been really fun.
Lincoln in on the chat because I think he actually put together the char cube that we talked
Oh,
about
he
last
did
year.
put it together? That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
awesome.
He's got a list. He submitted it for the bar cube this year. So hey, if you wind up going, then we'll have to jam it.
Yes, and also Micah in our playgroup. He built his Five Below cube. So that's really another cool thing. It's like going off topic a
Faithful
little
hour
bit
cube.
is the Fateful Hour
I don't mean
cube.
to correct you, but yeah, that's mine, Ian. I have the five below
Oh,
cube.
yes.
Unrelated.
You can have so many different iterations of like a similar topic.
Oh,
So
absolutely. That's another environment where, like I mentioned before, you find these really interesting or niche uses for otherwise garbage cars. Like I recently got, it's literally next to my desk right now. It's Fourth Bridge Prowler.
what
Bonus
is
points if
that?
anyone knows what that card
Oh, is
is.
that the one black one that gives something -1/-1? Is
Oh
that?
dang, this is not scripted, guys. By the way, but yes, that is exactly what it
Oh
is.
my
It's
gosh. I
It's
can't
from
believe
Eat
I
the
knew it.
Revolt, but it's a really cool card that you're only ever going to use in that environment. And so that's the kind of high that I wanted to chase with this Emerge cube. And there are a lot of cards in here that I think are uniquely powerful in this environment, and I'm glad that they are.
And now tell me a little bit about some Dustmorn cards that you're interested in.
I'm interested in surprisingly few cards, given how much the set cares about like creatures dying and delirium in the graveyard. You'd think there'd be a lot more. But there are a few that kind of really piqued my interest. There's one that's guaranteed going in. Uh, right now in the cube, there is a card called Unlucky Witness. It's a one drop in red. When it dies,
Oh, I love that
you
card.
get to look at the top two, exile one, and you get to play it till end of turn. People were receptive to it. It's a really cool card. It's a great inclusion, but in the first draft, there were a bunch of games where the person who drafted it would just block with it, which is bad because you only get to cast the card until the end of your turn, or it would get removed the moment that it comes down, and it was too early in the game, so you would just lose the cards you'd exile with it. But in Dustmore, there's another card which kind of fixes this problem. It's called Clockwork Percussionist. It doesn't dig as far as the Witness does, but it lets you play the card until your next turn after it exiles, or after it dies, I'm sorry. And then it also has haste to boot. So it's kind of like a Beaumont Courier kind of thing. So I'm very excited to just swap that in for the Unlucky Witness spot. I think it's a perfect fit. And it even opens up for Artifact or Delirium synergies down the road, which I'm excited for. Besides that, I like the Enduring Cycle. The enchantment creatures that come back.
Oh, those seem perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The idea of casting a creature, sacrificing it to generate mana, and then keeping its best part sticking around is very appealing to me on paper for this cube. The only issue that I have with it is that a couple of them are either extremely narrow, like the one that cares about life gain, and then the others are just generically good. Like if I'm back on the podcast, I'll probably talk about this a little more. But like,
Oh, we'll
I'm
have
not,
you back on again.
I'm not a huge fan of cards that are just generically good, that don't reward synergies or anything like that. I'll still probably try out a few of these. Like I like the green one quite a bit for this environment, but I'm not in a rush to acquire them and test them out. I will at some point. The only
Dustmorn
other
was an
card,
amazing set.
yeah. And there's one other card that I really liked, but it's competing with a bunch of things in the queue. It's called Came Back Wrong, I think is the name of it. It's a
What
kill
is
spell
that?
at sorcery. It's a kill spell at sorcery speed. Just a murder effect. You get to kill a creature, and then it comes back under your control with haste until the end of the turn. You sacrifice it at the end of the turn. So theoretically, the ceiling is really, really high. You destroy your opponent's best thing. You bring it back under your control, get any ETBs. You can use it as a ritual effect if it was a big creature, because you're paying 3 mana to kill a thing and then get 5 more mana out of it or whatever. Then you get any death triggers off of it as well. So it's in theory, it's a really, really good card for this cube, but it is a sorcery speed spell, which kind of puts me off of it a little bit. Whether that is just a balancing factor of it, whether that just makes it a balanced card or whether it actually holds it back is something that remains to be seen, though. I'm excited to try it out.
That sounds like amazing and like perfect for the environment. Wow,
Mm-hmm,
that's
mm-hmm.
going to be like insanely powerful. Uh, yeah. So I mean, let's wrap things up with a pack one, pick one here. If you want to read through the pack, or
Yes,
let's
yes,
hear it.
yes. Let me pull this up. Try and post the image somewhere where the listeners can see it, but I don't know how podcasts work, so maybe not. So I pulled up this pack. We're looking at
18
Snapcaster
card
Rage.
packs.
18 card packs. I forgot to specify that. You draft 3 card packs to make up for the fact that you have to get all your lands. So what I'm looking at here, I'm going to read them off. You've got a Snapcaster Mage, Cabal Pit, Twin Shot Sniper, Genesis Hydra, Stomping Ground, Shambling Vent, a basic forest, a basic mountain, a basic swamp, an inspiring vantage, sink into stupor, witch enchanter, Hogak Arisen Necropolis, Cloud Blazer, munitions expert, Sidisi's faithful, eternal witness, and harvester of souls.
Oh, good pack. I saw this pack and I was like, oh my gosh, what do you take from this? What are you
There are
thinking?
very few middling cards in this pack, and this is the kind of environment where taking a basic land pack one pick one is actually just a solid thing that you can do. I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan.
what do you think of it? What do you think are the top cards? I have some ideas.
Ooh, I part of me just wants to go Hogak for the memes. But if we're trying to win games, we're trying to be boring, I think our best bets are either going to be Harvester of Souls or Sink into Stupor.
Ooh,
Bounce
interesting.
effects tend to be really, really good in here, especially if you're bouncing a creature spell that's on the stack. And Sink into Stupor is also just a land, which, as we discussed, is really highly pickable in this environment. Then also, like I
Yeah.
brought up earlier, Harvester of Souls is an extremely good effect because it's also it's not symmetrical. It necessarily like it cares about your opponent's creatures dying, which means that your opponent's going to get punished for trying to enact their game plan as long as this is on the board. It's a great engine, great build around, great curve topper, fantastic. But I also, like I said, I really like Hogak in here. It's actually a fair card in this cube, which you don't see it all in constructed, but in cube environments, it's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I this pack is hard. I think I might be on Witch Enchanter because, like you
Mm-hmm,
said, it's a
mm-hmm.
bolt land, so it's a land, but it also is the great interaction. But I'm also super tempted to take Eternal Witness or Cloud Blazer.
I
I love
figured
both those
you'd like
cards.
the Eternal Witness. That's just you can't go wrong with that one, honestly.
So thank you everyone for listening to the first inaugural episode of Cuberviews. We're going to be having weekly episodes and subscribe. And thank you so much, Sam, for coming on. We'll definitely have you
Thank
again.
you for having me. I'll look forward to being on again at some point.
All
Look forward to
right.
see what you do.
Have a great night, everybody, or a good drive to work.